Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 6. Conversation between Narada and Vyasadeva. Text 1. Sutta Uvacha. Evam Nishamya Bhagavan Devasa Janmakarmacha Bhuya Paprachatam Brahma Vyasa Satyavati Sitaha.
Text 1, translation. Sutta said, O Brahmanas, thus hearing all about Sri Narada's birth and activities, Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God and son of Satyavati, inquired as follows.
Text 2. Vyasa Uvacha Vikshupir Vipravasita Vignadestra Vishtava Vartamano Vyasya Adya Tata Kim Akrato Bhavan.
Text 2, translation. Sri Vyasadeva said, what did you, Narada, do after the departure of the great sages who had instructed you in scientific transcendental knowledge before the beginning of your present birth?
Text 3. Swayambhuva Kaya Vritya Varittam Te Param Vaya Katham Chetam Uddashraksta Kala Prapte Kalavaram.
Text 3, translation. O son of Brahma, how did you pass your life after initiation, and how did you attain this body, having quit your old one in due course?
Text 4. Prakalpa Vishayam Etam Smritim Te Munisattama Nahaisha Vyavadyat Kala Esha Sarva Nirakrita.
Text 4, translation. O great sage, time annihilates everything in due course. So how is it that this subject matter, which happened prior to this day of Brahma, is still fresh in your memory, undisturbed by time?
Text 5. Narada Uvacha Vikshupir Vipravasita Vignadestri Mama Vartamano Vyayas Adya Tata Etat Akarasham.
Text 5, translation. Sri Narada said, the great sages who had imparted scientific knowledge of transcendence to me departed for the other places, and I had to pass my life in this way.
Text 6. Ekatmajama Janani Yoshin Mutta Chakinkari Maya Atmajananyagato Chakrasnehanubandanam.
Text 6, translation. I was the only son of my mother, who was not only a simple woman, but a maid servant as well. Since I was her only offspring, she had no other alternative for protection. She bound me with the tie of affection.
Text 7. Sasvatantra nakalpashid Yogashemam mamachati Tasya hi vase loko Yoshadaru mayatha.
Text 7, translation. She wanted to look after my maintenance properly, but because she was not independent, she was not able to do anything for me. The world is under the full control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, everyone is like a wooden doll in the hands of a puppet master.
Text 8. Aham chatat brahma kule Ushvimam tad upakshaya Diktesha kala vyutpanu Palaka panchahayana.
Text 8, translation. When I was a mere child of 5 years, I lived in a Brahmana school. I was dependent on my mother's affection and had no experience of different lands.
Text 9. Ekada nirgatam jehad duhantim nishigampati sarpoda satpada sprashta kripanam kala kuditaha.
Text 9, translation. Once upon a time, my poor mother, when going out one night to milk a cow, was bitten on the leg by a serpent, influenced by supreme time.
Text 10. Tada tad aham tasya bhaktanam sam abhisataha anugraham manyam manaha pratishtam disham uttaram.
Text 10, translation. I took this as the special mercy of the Lord, who always desires benediction for his devotees, and so thinking, I started for the north.
Text 11. Tanjanapadam tatra urugrama vrachakaran ketakharvatavatescha vanani upavanani cha.
Text 11, translation. After my departure, I passed through many flourishing metropolises, towns, villages, animal farms, mines, agricultural lands, valleys, flower gardens, nursery gardens, and natural forests.
Wow. Tradatu vichitrodrin iba bhagna bhujadruman jalasya naji shiva jalan nalint sura sevitaha चित्रस्वाने पात्रराथे विभ्रमद्ब्रह्मराश्रयः.
Text 12, translation. I passed through hills and mountains full of reservoirs of various minerals like gold, silver, and copper, and through tracts of lands with reservoirs of water filled with beautiful lotus flowers, fit for the denizens of heaven, decorated with bewildered bees and singing birds.
Text 13. Nalavenu sarastanva kushake chakagavaram eka evati attoham adraksham vipinam mahat Koram pratibhayakaram vyaloka shivajiram.
Text 13, translation. I then passed alone through many forests of rushes, bamboo, reeds, sharp grass, weeds, and caves, which were very difficult to go through alone. I visited deep, dark, and dangerously fearful forests, which were the play yards of snakes, owls, and jackals.
Parishantriya yatmaham tratparito bubukshitaha snatva nadya upashtrogatashramah.
Text 14, translation. Thus traveling, I felt tired, both bodily and mentally, and I was both thirsty and hungry. So I took a bath in a river lake and also drank water. By contacting water, I got relief from my exhaustion.
Text 15. Tasmin nirmanujranyai viplapashta ashritaha atmanamanam atmashtam yata shrutam achintayam.
Text 15, translation. After that, under the shadow of a banyan tree in an uninhabited forest, I began to meditate upon the supersoul situated within, using my intelligence as I had learned from liberated souls.
Text 16. Dhyayat ततश्चरणं भोजं भवनिर्जेतचेतसा उत्कण्ठ्य यश्रुकालक्षस्य हृदयसिन्मेषनर्हरिः.
Text 16, translation. As soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared on the lotus of my heart.
Text 17. Premati paranirvina pulagoti nirprataha ananda samplavalino napashyam ubhayam muna.
Text 17, translation. O Vyasadeva, at that time, being exceedingly overpowered by feelings of happiness, every part of my body became separately enlivened. Being absorbed in an ocean of ecstasy, I could not see both myself and the Lord.
Text 18. Rupam bhagavato yattan manakandham sujapaham apashyan sahasotaste vaiklavyat durmana eva.
Text 18, translation. The transcendental form of the Lord, as it is, satisfies the mind's desire and at once erases all mental incongruities. Upon losing that form, I suddenly got up, being perturbed, as is usual when one loses that which is desirable.
Text 19. Didrakshushtad aham bhuyaha pranidaya manoride vikshamano pinapashyam aviprata ivaturaha. Hare Krishna.
Text 19, translation. I desired to see again that transcendental form of the Lord, but despite my attempts to concentrate upon the heart with eagerness to view the form again, I could not see him anymore, and thus dissatisfied, I was very much aggrieved. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Harsha Mataji and Veena Mataji, for that. That was really nice.
Hare Krishna.
So, yes, so today we will be obviously continuing with chapter 6 and starting from text 6, 6, 7, 8, they don't have a purport. So we will go up to text 9 and then text 9 has a purport. So we'll discuss that. But we will just go through the Mangala Charan first. Om Jnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Govinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Hare Krishna. So just share presentation. So as I said, we'll start with text 6. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ekatmaja me janani yoshin mudha cha kinkari mayatmaje nanyagato chakre snehanubandhanam. Translation for that. I was the only son of my mother, who was not only a simple woman, but a maidservant as well. Since I was her only offspring, she had no other alternative for protection. She bound me with the tie of affection. Text 7. Sasvatantra na kalpasi yogakshemam mamechati ishasya hi vashe loko yoshadaru mayatha. Translation. She wanted to look after my maintenance properly, but because she was not independent, she was not able to do anything for me. The world is under the full control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, everyone is like a wooden doll in the hands of a puppet master. Text 8. Aham chatad brahmakule ushivam stadupekshaya digdesha kala vyutpanno balaka panchahayanaha. Translation. When I was a mere child of 5 years, I lived in a Brahmana school. I was dependent on my mother's affection and had no experience of different lands. And then the verse that we'll be discussing, text 9. Ekada nirgatam gehad duhantim nishigam pati sarpo dashat padas prishta kripanam kala choditaha. Translation of text 9. Once upon a time, my poor mother, when going out one night to milk a cow, was bitten on the leg by a serpent, influenced by supreme time. And then, so now we have a purport for text 9. Maybe we can have, would anyone like to volunteer to read this paragraph, please?
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. That is the way of dragging a sincere soul nearer to God. The poor boy was being looked after only by his affectionate mother, and yet the mother was taken from the world by the supreme will in order to put him completely at the mercy of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay, so we're looking, continuing this story, this pastime of Narad Muni, and he's saying in this one that he was the only child, and he's explaining that his mother is a maidservant and that she had no other children. So she saw that he was, at that time he's a young child, but you think that when the child grows older, they will protect me. So they became, Narad Muni became bound to his mother with the tie of affection. So through the affection that he was shown by his mother, they felt, bound to each other. And then explains that she was trying to look after him properly, but ultimately, she couldn't do anything because, no one, she says she was not independent, but we know that no one is independent. And then, then it says the world is under the full control of the Supreme Lord. So we know that none of us are independent. We are all dependent on the Supreme Lord. We're all dependent on Krishna. And then it has this wonderful analogy that we are like a wooden doll in the hands of a puppet master. And as we all know, we don't need to go into the pastime again, but we all know that Srila Prabhupada said a very similar thing, when he arrived in America. After his voyage on the Jaladuta, then he said, to Krishna when he was writing his prayer that basically, I'm just a puppet in your hands, and if you wish to make me dance, then make me dance, make me dance, make me dance as you like. So Srila Prabhupada was also showing that to us, demonstrating to us as well that we are all, like this puppet in the hands of the Lord. So ultimately, she's trying to look after him, but she can't do anything unless, without Krishna's sanction, then nothing can be done. So, ultimately it's all happening under Krishna's arrangement, under Krishna's control. And then, just like Srila Prabhupada sometimes gives this example actually in some of his classes, that like you may have the best doctor, you may have some disease, and then you may get the best doctors, and they may give the best treatment and best surgery, and everything is just the best there is. But still, if it's not meant to be, then still that person may pass away. So it still ultimately comes down to Krishna's will. So I think we can look after everyone, like our relatives and everyone, but ultimately we can only do it to a certain extent. But ultimately we are all under Krishna's protection, Krishna's will. And then he was saying again that he was just dependent on his mother's affection, and he had no experience of different lands, which means he didn't travel anywhere. He was always just there all the time. I didn't go anywhere else. And he was there living in school just at the age of 5. And it says a Brahmana school, so we can understand the kind of the qualities or the character of the students attending that school. It's not like the schools we have these days. It's a Brahmana school, so we can understand that the students were there learning how to cultivate the qualities of a Brahmana, how to be a Brahmana, how to have the character of a Brahmana. But yeah, he still felt that he was just dependent on his mother. So he's saying that he was dependent on his mother, so we can understand he's not yet fully surrendered to the Lord. He's not yet fully kind of come to the point where I'm just only dependent on Krishna and no one else. Ultimately, at this point in time, he's still feeling that, oh, I'm dependent on my mother's affection. But then we see in today's verse that it says, influenced by supreme time, which is again, well, time is like a manifestation of Krishna, as we, he says in the Bhagavad Gita that time I am, the destroyer of worlds. So all these things happen by the influence of time, which is ultimately under Krishna's control. So by this influence, this is how his mother left her body through a snake bite. So it doesn't really, that's kind of the last we hear about Narad Muni's mother, what happens to her. So then it seems like obviously from a material point of view, and a very sad situation, and not just material, but just in general, it's obviously a sad situation. But we can understand that, just as we just, throughout this whole pastime of Narad Muni, and we'll hear more about it, that, ultimately, in his because of his association with the Bhaktivedantas, those great devotees who he was serving and his mother was serving, then, he got lots of mercy in that way. And then ultimately his next life, he became Narad Muni. So we can understand, even though it's not mentioned after this, that his mother, she was also serving these great devotees of the Lord, these Bhaktivedantas. So we can understand she also must have had a, if not, back to Godhead or something like that, we can't really speculate on that, but she must have had a much better, a very highly elevated position in her next life, whatever it might be. But obviously at the time, for a 5-year-old boy, it goes without saying, it's a very, very difficult time. So it's kind of like, if we look in the purport, it's kind of like tough love from Krishna. That sometimes people say that phrase, tough love, because we see this is, Srila Prabhupada is saying that this is the way of dragging a sincere soul nearer to God, who's actually being not just taken to God, but pulled, dragged nearer to God. So it seems like a tough mercy, like a tough situation. But ultimately, this is Krishna's arrangement to bring the boy, to bring Narad Muni closer to him. And Srila Prabhupada is explaining that, this is Krishna's arrangement. And now, because that dependence he had on his mother has now been taken away, so now he has no choice no choice except to be completely dependent on Krishna, to completely surrender to the supreme will, it says here. So, sometimes it's interesting. I was in a different Sangha yesterday, and a lot of points that I'm going to discuss today also came up yesterday. We were covering a similar topic in one Bhakti Vriksha session, and we were talking about this as well, that like some people, there's different ways of learning. Like some people, they just hear it, they just hear something, like we hear something from the scriptures, for example, we hear something that Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, and just by hearing it we accept it, and that's it, we learn from it. We don't have to sort of go through it, if you like. Then second is like they need examples, they need to see examples of others who've gone through it and learned that lesson, then they're able to accept it. They can't just accept it just by hearing on its own. And then, we have many examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam that we can see that these people went through these things, and then by reading those pastimes, we can learn from that. We can learn from the example. But the third kind of person only learns by experience. They actually have to go through it themselves. They have to learn the hard way, So sometimes Krishna tries to tell us something, he tries to give us a message, he tries to teach us something, but just by hearing it, we don't accept it. Then he tries to show us examples around us of other devotees, and like that, still we don't accept it. So at that point, he feels, okay, now I have no choice, I'll have to actually, he actually has to go to a bit more drastic measures, to actually teach us that lesson, to actually wake us up. So sometimes it's tough at the time, but sometimes it's necessary. Just like the parent dragging the child out of bed in the morning, they don't enjoy it, but it's necessary. So sometimes this happens. This is what Krishna does. This is what Srila Prabhupada did as well. He came to the West and dragged everyone. Everyone was sleeping in this bed of material existence, this bed of sense gratification, and he dragged everyone out of that bed. He woke us up. So, sometimes there have to be, drastic measures sometimes have to be taken if we don't listen, if we keep ignoring that lesson. Because, Krishna, through various things that happen to us, Krishna tries to teach us something. But if we don't learn, he keeps giving us the same thing. But once it's said that once we really fully learn from that, then Krishna never gives us the same difficulty or the same test again once we've properly understood it and got through it. So this point about Krishna's taking away, Krishna's giving and taking away, Srila Prabhupada says, is the same thing. Krishna's giving and his taking away. This is both Krishna's mercy. So, very perfect verse. So just got another verse here that I wanted to look at in relation to today's verse. So this is Canto 10, Chapter 88, text 8. So it's towards the end of the 10th canto. We know the 10th canto is 90 chapters, so this is in chapter 88. This is Krishna himself speaking. Krishna says, Yasyaham anugrihnami harishyeta dhanam shane tato dhanam tyajantyasya swajana dukkha dukkita. So, translation for that. The personality of Godhead said, if I especially favor someone, I gradually deprive him of his wealth. Then the relatives and friends of such a poverty-stricken man abandon him. In this way, he suffers one distress after another. So again, it's showing the same point about Krishna's tough love, that he's saying, if I especially favor someone, I gradually deprive him, I gradually take away his wealth. For a materialistic person, they wouldn't be able to understand that this is not, how can this possibly be Krishna's favor? No, this is Krishna's punishment, or this is some cruel joke on me. Why would he take away my wealth? But no, Krishna is saying, actually, if I'm taking away, it means I'm showing some special favor. Obviously, this is talking about material wealth, material opulence. Because when we are too absorbed in material opulence, then we can't really focus on spiritual life. We can't really focus on something more, let alone engage in devotional service. So for that reason, sometimes he takes that wealth away. Then it says the relatives and friends may abandon that person. So this is again talking about, very kind of materialistic relatives and friends, those that have very selfish motives, and for example, friends that just hang around with you because you're rich, but then once you become poverty stricken, then they have no interest in you anymore. So then all of these materialistic persons abandon you, which again makes you surrender more to Krishna. It makes us feel more dependent on Krishna. And in this way, he suffers one distress after another. So then we experience material distresses. We think, oh, this is there's no enjoyment here. And again, makes us even more inclined to surrender to Krishna. Just like a very elevated example, but obviously we all know the example of Kunti Devi, who prayed to Krishna that, when all these terrible things were happening to me and my sons, but while these things were happening, I was fully focused on you. So I pray that these calamities come again and again, so that my mind would always be fixed on you. So yeah, it's a very elevated example. May not be relatable for us, but we can understand the principle there. That when we go through this suffering and calamities, then we are more inclined to focus on Krishna. So then, yeah, so I just had these verses on the presentation, and I have some further points, but it's I didn't get around to including it on the presentation, but I'll just share some more things that some thoughts that came to mind regarding today's verse. So, one thing is this point about, Krishna taking away. So we see there's like a contrast between the demigods and Krishna and the Supreme Lord in terms of, when we're asking them for benedictions, we're praying to them for something. We see, I've got a quote from a Srila Prabhupada lecture, a Srimad Bhagavatam lecture. I'll just read that because, Srila Prabhupada will explain better than me. So this is a lecture in Geneva on 2nd of June, 1974. And I'll just read this paragraph. Srila Prabhupada said that there are so many demigods they have taken to worship. The Romans were worshipping demigods. In India, they also worship demigods. That will not make you happy. Antavat tu phalam tesham tadbhavat yalpamedasam. Bhagavad Gita 7:23. To take some benediction from the demigods, although people go there, kankshanta karmanam siddhim yajanta ihadevataha. Bhagavad Gita 4:12. The people are very much attached to enjoy this material world. So they worship Durga, Kali, or Lord Shiva. But kankshanta karmanam siddhim, they get immediately some material benefit. But tadbhavat yalpa medasam, what you will do with some temporary material benefit, that is the instruction of Krishna. Don't be attracted by the temporary material benefits. Just strive for permanent, eternal benefit. Go back to home, back to Godhead. So sometimes it mentions the example of Lord Shiva, so I'll just give that example as well. They said that Lord Shiva is Ashutosh, he's very easily pleased. So when we pray to him, we can very easily get these material things that we desire. And because of that, because he easily gives these things, we see this interesting contrast that Lord Shiva, he has no opulence. You can see just by looking at him that he has no opulence. He has no opulence, but despite that, his followers tend to have the most opulence. They tend to be the most wealthy because he very easily grants these things to them. But on the other hand, we see Lord Vishnu, we see Krishna, the Supreme Lord, who has the most opulence, unlimited opulence. But in comparison, his followers, his devotees tend to be not very wealthy, not very opulent, sometimes poverty-stricken, not always. Some, as we know from modern examples, I'm sure we all know some devotees are also very wealthy, but generally, in comparison, Krishna, Lord Shiva very easily gives material benedictions, but Krishna very, very rarely gives such things. If they're going to take us even further away from Krishna, he's not going to give it to us. So we see this interesting contrast. Lord Shiva has no opulence, his followers have so much opulence. Lord Vishnu has the most opulence, his followers tend to have not so much opulence. However, we understand, like Srila Prabhupada said in that lecture, that it's just some temporary material benefit, but then it will go away after some time. But what we get from Krishna, even though we don't get that material opulence generally, but we get something far greater. We get devotion to Krishna, we get bhakti, which is, far, far greater than that. It's incomparable, really. So, so basically, one pastime actually to illustrate this very nicely, this point in this verse. From the 10th canto about Krishna taking him away. There's a pastime, we all know the pastime of the two sons of Kuvera, Nalakuvara and Manigriva. We all know this pastime because, you know, Kartik month is coming up fairly soon, and every day in Kartik, as we all know, we sing about the Damodar pastime, and as we know, within that pastime is explain how Krishna liberates Nalakuvara and Manigriva, who had been cursed by Narad Muni to be within these two trees, these twin Arjuna trees, and you know they were just trapped in these trees for such a long time with these tree bodies. And then when Krishna comes into the courtyard and he's dragging along, you know, the wooden grinding mortar behind him, and then he goes in between the two trees and he keeps going and he keeps going, and then the mortar gets stuck, and as we all know, he still keeps crawling further and further, and then there's a huge massive noise which can be heard from miles away, and the trees, you know, the trees have fallen down, and then out of these fallen trees the two sons of Kuvera come out again. But then in the next chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, we get to hear about their backstory, how, you know, these two sons of Kuvera, these two demigods, they are enjoying sense gratification with women in a lake, and then Narad Muni comes past and they don't even feel any shame. They just stand there not wearing any clothes, and Narad Muni decides to teach them a lesson by giving them a so-called curse, which is actually a blessing in disguise, because you know, he's apparently cursed them to come down from the heavenly planets to the material world and just remain standing as trees for thousands of years. So it seems like a curse, but ultimately Narad Muni was doing this because of the same reason, that depriving them of that wealth and opulence and humbling them so that they can actually start thinking about something greater, so that they can actually start thinking about spiritual life, start thinking about the Supreme Lord, rather than, you know, their own material desires. And in there, I can't remember whether it's in the verses or Srila Prabhupada explains in a purport in that chapter of Bhagavatam, that, you know, someone who's very wealthy and has so much opulence, they don't tend to think about these things. But when someone is not so well off, then actually, you know, they start to think about spiritual life. So out of his mercy, actually, Narad Muni took away their opulence, put them in this humble position. But ultimately, what is the blessing? Eventually, you know, they'll be standing in a courtyard in Gokul. They'll be standing outside the courtyard in Gokul near Krishna's home. And then eventually, you know, they will be liberated by Krishna himself. They will see Krishna face to face. So actually, such an incredible mercy that Narad Muni has given them. And then, you know, they become purified after that. They lose those material desires. It's very powerful. And then, you know, so I said earlier that Krishna doesn't tend to give these material benedictions if he knows it's going to take us away from him. So the only reason he gives us, the only reason he fulfills those material desires is if he knows we will only use it in his service, and we're not going to use it to fulfill any selfish desires of our own. just Srila Prabhupada says in lectures that for their self, devotee won't accept any wealth, any opulence, but for Krishna service, they can accept unlimited. Krishna can give them unlimited opulence to be used in his service, but for their own sake, they wouldn't take anything, or they wouldn't accept anything. So, yeah, so that's like I said. So I'm sure we know examples. We may have friends, devotees that are very wealthy, but Krishna has ultimately it's by Krishna's arrangement. So Krishna has given them that wealth because he knows they're not just going to waste it on material desires, but they're going to spend it or use it in his devotional service. Just like so many devotees who may have very nice, expensive cars, and then you see some devotees, they use that. What do they use that car for? You may have seen sometimes when there's a Rath Yatra, they will use the expensive car to drive the deities, to drive Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, or something like that. That's one example of how these devotees, they may be very wealthy, but they use it for Krishna. So therefore, Krishna gives it to them. But if we still have those material desires and not going to use it for his service, then he knows it's probably best not to fulfill that desire that they're asking for. So, yeah, so another pastime that we can see regarding this point is the pastime of Krishna and Sudama the Brahman. Again, I'm sure we all know this pastime. I'll just quickly summarize that. This is, there's more than one Sudama. There's also the coward boy Sudama, but this is Sudama the Brahmana, who Krishna became friends with at school in the Gurukul of Sandipani Muni in Ujjain. So yeah, they were school friends, and then afterwards, they went their separate ways. And as we all know, Sudama was very, very impoverished, very, very poverty-stricken. So his wife, who says, you are friends with Krishna, so why don't you go and see Krishna? He can help us. But then obviously, if you go to see someone, you take some gift for them. And they were so poor, they didn't have anything whatsoever to give Krishna in the house. So he went out and he begged and managed to get just a very small handful of poor quality chipped rice, and just just a very tiny quantity and nothing special from material point of view. So anyway, he went there, and we know the pastimes that Krishna greets him so amazingly and treats him like a worshipable Brahmana, which he is a Brahmana. But we know that Krishna worships the Brahmanas and the cows. So he was giving him such a worshipful reception, and he was washing his feet and all of these things. And and then he gets forcibly takes this handful of cheap rice, which, because it was given with devotion, Krishna sees it as he doesn't see it as something cheap, but he sees it something as the highest, and he feels so indebted. But anyway, by the end of the pastime and the interaction between Sudama and Krishna, Sudama just he just forgot to ask. He went there to ask for help, but then he didn't even ask anything, and then he just left. So he left without asking Krishna for anything. But then, when he got home, what did he see? He no longer saw the little hut that he used to live in, the little house, but no, he saw a huge palace. And he was confused at first that where am I? Have I come back home, or have I got lost or something? And then he sees in this palace where his home used to be, there's so many countless maidservants, and he's wondering, who are these? Whose servants are these? Sorry. And then he sees a beautiful woman, and he doesn't recognize as his wife first. Then he realizes, oh, this is actually my wife. And then even Sudama's body becomes transformed as well. So then we see basically that Krishna gave, without Sudama even having to ask for anything, Krishna gave all of these things to him. So much opulence he gave him, but he knew Sudama is obviously not going to use it for material gain. He's going to use it in Krishna's service. So he gave him so much opulence. It's said that this pastime was just done because Sudama had just one little material desire left. He had just one tinge of material desire. And what was that? He was actually attached to his renunciation. He had some material attachment to his renunciation. So this pastime was Krishna's arrangement, so just to get rid of that last material desire. And then after that, he had no material desires whatsoever. So then he gave him all that opulence, knowing that he would just use it for his service. Okay, so just one more pastime actually of this, and then we can open it up to any questions or comments. So you may have also heard there is a very nice pastime which features Sanatana Goswami, as we know, one of the 6 Goswamis, one of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So there's a pastime between Sanatana Goswami and a very wealthy merchant. So again, I didn't go around to adding this to the slides, but I will just read out a little summary of this pastime. Okay, so yeah, so this is from Srila Prabhupada, another lecture from Srila Prabhupada in Bombay, 26th of December, 1972. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada, he says that whenever one is a little bit rich, he'll find out how to spend it for Krishna, not for his sense gratification. Just like this Motherboard Temple was constructed by a big merchant. He approached Sanatana Goswami. Sir, what can I do for you? I want to serve you. So Sanatana Goswami said, my Madan Mohan, I am living underneath the tree and my Madan Mohan is just hanging. So if you can construct a temple for Madan Mohan. Similarly, Maharaj Mansingh approached Rupa Goswami. They never constructed big temple for their own living purpose, but Krishna's purpose. That is the way. For Krishna, we must have everything very gorgeous and first class, but not for me. That is a kinchana. Personally, we should not possess anything, but simply for Krishna. So, again, this point that through this pastime, so much opulence, so much wealth was offered to Sanatana Goswami by this merchant that I want to use all this wealth for you. I want to serve you. So he could have, obviously it's Sanatana Goswami is a pure devotee, so he wouldn't, but just for the point of discussion that, he could have asked for something material, and, he could have given that money for something material for his own sake. But no, he was offered so much wealth, and he said, no, use that wealth to construct a temple for my deity, for Mother Mohan, for the Lord. So yeah, so it was used just for Krishna. And then just to add some more details of this pastime, because that was just a very short summary from Srila Prabhupada. So I got this from another website, holydham.com, which is a website affiliated with ISKCON Desire Tree, and it has some explanation about some various holy places. So regarding this pastime of Sanatana Goswami and the Mother Mohan deity, it says that the construction of the temple can be traced to a wealthy salt merchant named Krishna Das Kapoor, who one day was delivering his goods by boat to a market in Agra. When the boat became grounded on a sandbar just opposite Sanatana's hut, Kapoor began to pray for the help of God. Seeing Kapoor's despair, Sanatana invited him to worship Madan Mohan. And while he was praying before the deity, the boat floated clear. Kapoor was then able to complete his business and profiting large sums of money as a result. The wealthy merchant felt indebted to Madan Mohan. Thus, he agreed to finance the building of Madan Mohan's temple. The imposing edifice that exists today was completed sometime in the 1580s. So you can see it's very nice pastime that, due to his gratitude to the Lord, this merchant said, okay, I've gained all this profit, all this wealth, but it's simply due to Madan Mohan, it's simply due to Krishna. So therefore I should give that back to Krishna. So he agrees to build the Motherboard Temple. It's a very big temple. If you've been to Vrindavan, you may have seen, well, I'm sure you have seen if you've been to Vrindavan. It's a very nice temple. As I said here, it was completed sometime in the 1580s. So yeah, sometime in the 16th century it was completed. So yeah, so that's just another pastime showing how the devotees, they may receive so much opulence, but they only use it for Krishna. So that's the points that I had. I had a question anonymously on the topic of material opulence. Is it easier for the rich who have good family support to have faith in God? What if one who is distressed loses their faith instead of getting closer? So thank you to the devotee who asked that question. So yeah, it's a very nice question actually. But it depends on the individual, it depends on the situation. So, you know, the first thing they said that, you know, maybe someone, they're rich, so they have all this opulence, so they're well off, they don't feel in need of their material necessities or anything like that. They're in that comfortable position, and then if they have good family support, then yeah, that is a nice situation. And then they're able to, because their material desires are kind of fulfilled to a degree, then that kind of anxiety is not there. So then yeah, they could then focus more on spiritual matters. Obviously there's still some anxiety, because once we have these material things, then we think, oh, now I have to keep it, what if I lose it? And then we get anxious in that way to hold on to it. But obviously those necessities are taken care of if they're wealthy. But it depends on the person, it depends on their association, what kind of association they have. Yes, they have good family support, but do they have the association of devotees? Have they even come across devotees? Have they even got any interest in spiritual life? If they do, then yeah, then it can be beneficial to have that opulence, because they're comfortable, and then they can more easily just get on, with their service. But again, not necessarily. It depends on the individual. If they're just fully absorbed in that opulence, even if they have good family support, they may not have that faith in God. And then the second sort of part of the question, that someone who is distressed could possibly lose faith instead of getting closer. And that's definitely true, that those who are distressed, possibly they lose faith and think, oh, I'm being put through all these situations, so therefore why should I think about God? Or maybe there is no God, or that I'm being put through all these difficult situations, so then God doesn't really care, or like that. So they lose faith. But that's because, again, they're not really started practicing spiritual life yet. I mean, they may have a little bit, but not to a great degree. And this point about association is very important, that if they have no association and no guidance, then it's more likely that will happen. They'll lose faith, and then they'll fall away. But if they had good association, good devotee association, then that keeps them strong, that keeps them going, then that keeps them having that faith. And also, if they're reading regularly, if they're reading the scriptures and they're hearing, then also they get that faith, because then that won't come to mind, that perhaps there's no God, or perhaps he doesn't care. That will never come to mind, because in the scriptures it explains so many times about these things, why we actually go through these difficult situations, and ultimately, like we discussed before, it's a form of Krishna's mercy. So then if we're reading regularly and understanding the scriptures, then we won't lose faith. So we have the Shastra, and we have the association of devotees, and obviously we have Guru, we have the spiritual master as well. Then so it depends. So one person with lots of wealth may have lots of faith in God, and one person with lots of wealth may have no faith in God. And then again, someone who is very poverty stricken, who's distressed, they may have lots of faith, or they may have very little. It depends, because they're all on a different journey. Okay, there's another anonymous question. So I don't understand the questions so much, but it says that can a person become spiritual and wise because of these adversities without much attachment to God? I wouldn't say spiritual, like we can learn, even if we're not attached to God, we go through adversities, and then we can obviously, even non-devotee materialistic people, they say, oh, I've gone through these adversities and I've learned something from it, and I've developed, my self-development has increased from there, and I've gone forward, I've moved forward. So even in material civilization, material life, that's there as well. But it's not true. You're missing the full picture. It's not true wisdom, and it's not spiritual, because you have no attachment to God. You have no understanding of God. You don't have the understanding of the full picture. That why have these adversities come to me, and ultimately, what am I supposed to learn from a spiritual point of view? From the point of view of eternity, the scriptures give us the understanding of eternity, not just the point of view, the perspective of one lifetime, but all lifetimes, the Shastras give us that spiritual vision, that spiritual understanding. So yes, if we're not devotees and just materialistic persons, we may learn from this suffering, these difficult situations, but we won't learn everything. We won't understand true spiritual knowledge regarding that. Anyway, I don't know if that's a good answer, but yeah, does anyone else have any questions or comments or additions before we finish?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for your class. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice, all the example you have given. It really helps us to understand the Krishna's dealing with each person, individual, whether they're at the moment they're spiritually elevated or not. Even they're not, Krishna is there in our heart. So he's always trying to help us, like we can see in 11th canto, the Avanti Brahman, he was rich, he lost everything, and eventually he realized that it was all Krishna's arrangement, and that's why Krishna especially gave that example to Uddhava. So with this reading and hearing the Shastra, we can understand that whatever happening is for our benefit, whether we become poverty stricken or we become rich. If we don't have the spiritual realization, if we don't come to the on the spiritual path, it's very difficult to realize this kind of a thing. But once only by the devotees association, we kind of try to practice, and Krishna also will give us this knowledge inside, then we won't get distressed. Whatever is coming, it's all Krishna's arrangement, So that way we can really not feeling distress. It's Krishna's arrangement. It is, So that's why hearing all the time, it gives us this understanding and gives us the confidence. What Srila Prabhupada says. I mean, Srila Prabhupada at the beginning, when his pharmacy just, he went, and he was such a wonderful devotee. Everything happened because he realized that it was Krishna. At that time, Krishna just was taking all his material opulence, So through this example, we can realize and we can come to some understanding. This is the way forward. There is no other way. There's no other way. Thank you so much. You've given a lot of example for us to understand and to progress. Thank you very much for your class. Is that your initiated name, Nikhil Prabhu?
No, I'm not initiated.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing. That was very nice, Mataji.
Thank you.
Vanita Mataji, you have a question?
Just wanted to say thank you. Lovely lesson. Learned a lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Harish. Just the point that was mentioned about Krishna being in our heart and Krishna being with us, and understanding that's all due to Krishna. It's nice that was mentioned, because I heard this point in a lecture from Srila Prabhupada actually this morning. How Krishna is always with us, and it says that actually Krishna is the only friend, and he's sitting in everyone's heart. He is so nice friend that he's simply trying to induce us to turn our face towards Krishna. He is coming as an avatar incarnation. He's giving us advice from within. Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. He's such a nice friend. Although we have left Krishna, Krishna has not left us. Here he is living with me, within my heart, to give me advice. Please come back. Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam. So Krishna is so nice friend. He is such a nice friend that even to the enemy he gives the greatest benediction. So this is going on a slightly different topic, but it's so nice. I just wanted to finish this paragraph. It says that just like Putana came to kill Krishna, smearing poison on her breast, but Krishna gave her promotion on the motherly platform Krishna is so grateful that this demon might have come to me to poison me, but I have sucked her breast, so she has become my mother. Therefore, she must get the position of my mother. Krishna is so grateful. If you give little service to Krishna sincerely, Krishna will never forget you. And he's so powerful. If Krishna becomes your friend and Krishna remembers you, then what you want more? Just imagine. So here it is said, Krishna Devata, fix up your mind in Krishna and be happy. So yes, slightly different, but it's very beautiful points. I just wanted to end with that. Okay, so do we have anything else? Otherwise, we will finish for this evening. Okay. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for coming to another chat session. And of course, we will continue with this chapter tomorrow. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhyavacha patita nam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha ananti koti vaishnav vrindaki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you for lovely class.
Thank you.